Jumping into our third series of the day here. Got another new matchup for you and some new players. Spawning in the bottom left-hand corner, the blue Vanguard player playing from Korea. He was in our previous event and wants to see if he can make it even further this time around. This is B.O.B. And starting in the top right-hand corner, the man, the myth, the legend, the host of the AureilStormgate Tournament #2. Playing with the red celestial units. This is Aureil. Now, I'm actually a bit surprised here because on Broken Crown, this map is so small, and we saw in the previous series that this is a very, very strong map for the Morph Core rush. I kind of thought maybe Aureil would take advantage of that as well, but it seems to not be the case. Instead of opting to just go for a bit of an early economic push. Now, this is kind of a nice little bit of damage here. There is a scout chilling at this Luminite mine. It does, in that position where it was standing, it actually does prevent that collection array from going down. So it does delay things a little bit. Bob does manage to... does manage to make sure that Aureil is committing into this damage. But check this out. Double barracks opening here from Bob. He's going to just go straight into scouts. We haven't seen a big scout rush since, I mean, like, it's been at least 2 or 3 patches here that scouts only have been incredibly strong. But recently, not the most recent balance patch, but in recent patches, scouts actually were buffed to do bonus damage versus light and versus creep as well. So in the case of the health camp that are light creep, they are getting an additional 8 damage on each of those units. So this does become kind of an interesting position here. This is a creation chamber that was not built with the morph core, so this is much slower than normal. I think right now Bob is just waiting for this armor debuff to be depleted, and he might just rush on in here. This is a very vulnerable moment here for Aureil, and Bob's not aware of it. I think he's just going to try and clear camps. Bob, you have what you need. Bob, go! Oh, he should scout. Okay, he does scout. He does scan and see that the creation chambers are just now finishing up, but oh, he might have had a window. He might have had a window where he could have just dealt lethal damage. Instead, he's going to take these scouts and try and harass the collection array. Now, the collection array can lift and just move on into the sky out of the range of those scouts, so no big deal to Aureil if that does end up happening. It does limit a little bit of mining time, but it shouldn't be anything terribly lethal along the way. But instead, he is just going to utilize the Sovereign's Watch and push that back as well. So getting a little bit of damage. Does he? I don't know. He doesn't pick off any of those scouts. So scouts are going to be able to walk away from that damage free. And what could have been a very interesting opener here for Bob to get some quick lethal damage down onto his opponent. Instead, it's just going to be scouts running across the map and utilizing these units to clear camps. I mean, that's still a pretty decent exchange, right? It is a great way to secure some units and put himself into position to kind of lock in the early game benefit. Because Aureil can't get out of his main base, he's only got a couple of these Argents. He's not going to be able to come and fight these camps. And with a little bit of a micro, these scouts should be able to continue dealing additional damage and securing more benefits for Bob. He's going to have the vision camp. He's going to be able to get some of these passive benefits. Now, Aureil's no slouch either. He is on a 3-base economy right now. He's going to pick up additional creation chambers. Did break down 2 of these trees as well. So these are connected. Also, shout out to these trees. Dang, they kind of look nice. More than kinda. They look nice. So Aureil in a pretty decent position right now. He does have an arc station, so tier 2 tech is done. The command station for or Central Command, excuse me, for Bob is now just about to complete. So tier 2 for both of our players. It won't be continued production into the scouts. The scouts are just going to be utilized kind of very similar to Reapers in StarCraft 2, where very good in the opening onsets. They do have some upgrades that can take them into the later game if he would want to, but I imagine that these are just going to be utilized for scouting and harassment, and once their initial worth is depleted, it's just they'll just kind of fade out. So we do have exos on the map here for Bob. Now he chose to get this quick draw hustle first instead of getting the Lancer upgrade, the kinetic redirection, which makes them a little bit more tanky and a little bit more mobile. So kind of an interesting choice there. I don't know if that's something that Bob could tap into at this opening, but I think he does really want to put pressure on this third base location. Now there are Cabal out for Aureil. Those are going to be very good at slowing the army down of Bob, not to mention it's going to be able to isolate units as well. But these units are just going to dive on in here. These Lancers will be able to deal some nice straight line damage and kind of pick off some of these more valuable units. The creep count isn't incredibly high here, but now we are going to see those exos benefiting from their upgrade. Kinetic redirection is done as well. So all of the units in this army have been upgraded. Purify Nova has been dropped on the backside to try and keep these units from being impacted. But right now, I mean, there really is no status debuff that is available for Bob. So Bob's just going to try and fight into this army. This is a very weird position to push into. I don't feel like Bob has to put a ton of pressure here. There's really no major damage looming, I guess, other than the fact that Bob is not on a third base on the opposite side of the map. So seeing an opponent that has 3 bases and actually 4 bases as well does provide a little bit of a moment here. Now the Purify Nova does do a good job of refilling the energy here. So not only does it remove debuffs, but it does also capitalize on the Argent's direct need for additional energy. So it is a good use out of Aureil to keep all of these energy dependent units topped up and ready to go. Exo's going to be able to grab that collection array. No, he has to turn around because the Kree come in and they are a target that cannot be ignored. So that collection array is going to survive, and it's going to come at the cost of Bob's almost his entire army at this point. This is devastating damage for Bob. Aureil is going to be able to push on forward. I think he has just enough units here to capitalize on that mistake. Bob thought he was going to limit the economy of his opponent, and instead he has his army dismantled, and suddenly Aureil is in between the main base and the natural expand of the Vanguard player, and there just is nothing back at home to deal with this. Some small reinforcements are going to trickle out here, but ultimately these are going to be taken apart. The base is going to be left exposed. The reinforcements are going to rally across the map, and Bob is going to have to tap out here in game number 1. A very, very well-timed play by Aureil to dismantle his opponent and move himself to a 1-0 advantage in this series. Opening onsets here. Morph Core comes out, dropping a collection array forward. This is pretty standard on this map. This used to look a little bit different in terms of design. This used to not be blocked off. This used to be kind of an open path to this double Luminite location. A couple of different options. I mean, if your main is right here, you could choose to go to the east in Aureil's current position, capitalize on the Therium and Luminite location. But this double Luminite spot, very tempting for Celestial players. Very tempting, especially when you are interested in just utilizing Argents. I mean, Argents pretty good. They only cost Luminite, so having access to a double resource of those, pretty good. It is going to be command post first out of Bob, and that doesn't surprise me, especially with how big this map is. Even if Aureil had floated directly across without stopping, I don't think this map is as good for a Morph Core rush. So being able to get that command post out right away is a smart choice. Bob can then multiply his economy as quickly as he possibly can. But we saw game number 1 that Aureil really didn't tap into the cheekier side of his skill set. Instead, just opting to open for a really strong economic opening, getting 3 or 4 of those collection arrays, just kind of building out from there, having a pretty standard non-mechanical army. Seeing those cabals getting added in more and more feels like a nice composition, especially when vector rushes are as strong as they are. But I do know that vectors in the balance patch that was dropped yesterday, a surprise to all of us, vectors did receive a little bit of a nerf. So if you might remember, the vectors have an upgrade called recall that allows them to jump forward, and when they would like to, they can return to their initial starting location with all of the health that they had at the beginning of the jump. Pretty strong, right? And you can jump on in, deal a lot of harassment damage, and very similar to Stalker Micro in StarCraft 2, you just blink it back, but instead you just have fully healed units once again. No longer that recall jump still available, but you do travel back with the damage that you received during the jump, quote unquote. So I wonder if that will limit the amount of vectors that we do see in this matchup. Hard to say. Again, we've had less than 24 hours with the new balance patch. We're going to see some unique paths moving forward. But in this game, we are going to see hedgehogs. Hedgehogs are still pretty good. I think they're still a pretty strong unit. They did get a little bit of a nerf themselves as well. I think they do some reduced damage overall, but versus heavy units, they stayed at the original amount. So I think it was like 10 plus 5 to heavy. Now it's 8 plus 7. So utilizing their usefulness and making them more situational rather than, oh, well, I'll just build 80 of them and I'll just go win the game because they're just so stinking good. So right now, I'm going to be able to clear out that health camp utilizing that Bob to not only knock down the trees to allow these hedgehogs in. Oh, dude, doing donuts in the parking lot after work. Such a fun experience. But able to clear out those trees with the Bob. Provide a little bit of heal as well. So now these hedgehogs able to clear this camp, starting to move forward. These are going to be, yeah, you can see that these shadow demons do fall apart pretty quick. Those are heavy coated units. And what's Bob going to be dealing with from our opponent on the opposite side of the map? Blue Celestial player is just settling in once again. Oh my gosh, look at all of the collection arrays. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 homies on 6 base economy. That's wild. Now there are enough hedgehogs here to deal lethal damage, and I think this is kind of a smart idea. You only get so many charges of this Sovereign's Watch at any one point. I think you have 3 max, and it does take time to recharge them. So here's what Bob does. These hedgehogs are rather quick. So he just does little drive-bys. He forces out the Sovereign's Watch from these different locations and suddenly limits the defensive capabilities of his opponent. But now these Cabal are going to try and slow down these hedgehog, and they are successful to some degree, but being able to pick those off and drive away, still very strong for Bob. Aureil is going to have to kind of entrench himself in these different locations, now starting to utilize a little Sim City to hold these positions a bit better. It's a good response to Bob's initial approach, but don't get me wrong, Bob's approach I think is the right way to go about it. You utilize the speed of these hedgehogs to try and elicit a response out of your opponent, and so far Aureil is having to respond in kind. His energy is a little bit lower than he would otherwise like it. He doesn't have the opportunity to keep as many things powered. He's having to spend a little bit more money building some of these additional power banks at different locations, and that is a good start, but that's all it is. It is a start. We do start seeing some Kree coming out. The Kree are going to be able to if they can get in overwhelming numbers, they can surround these hedgehog and deal some really strong damage as well, as long as they're paired with the Cabal. So Aureil on a little bit of the back foot right now, but I can't stress enough. It's 6 base economy. What and look at this. We got 4, 6, 7. We got 8, 9, 10 creation chamber. So at any given point, we can pop out 10 Argents, 10 Kree, or 10 Cabal. And it's a crazy amount of Illuminite being mined right now. Behind this, the Therium count isn't quite as high. So we got 3 workers there. Yeah, we're just on 3 Therium workers. I think if Bob's not careful, he's going to let his opponent spin out of control, and we can start to see Aureil's economy kicking in, 103 to 95. But I mean, Aureil is getting that great Luminite count. Even if he's only able to produce Argents, I think that would be fine. Ooh, but these Kree, now we can start to see they are capitalizing on the approach here. We do have some Vulcans, though, being brought in as well, but instantly get lifted up by those Cabal. Those are now brought out of the equation, and once they get let down, suddenly there's just enough units to deal with them. These hedgehogs have been backed into a corner. The Kree in large enough supply, they can overwhelm and just pin these hedgehogs in place, and suddenly their mobility, their greatest strength, has now become an asset they cannot tap into. The Repair-O-Matic trying desperately to keep these sentry posts alive, but the sentry posts will fall and go down, and suddenly this position by Bob is no longer a protected one. These Cabal, or the Cabal, able to slow down all of these units. The Vulcans not even allowed to be a part of the fight, and that allows these Kree to just jump on forward. They're going to roll all over his opponent. 2 more Vulcan do pop out here. These are in a pretty decent location, especially since those Cabal did get picked off. They ran out of energy, and suddenly all of their capabilities fall with it. So Aureil in a little bit of a tough spot, but it's just too much. I mean, 135 to 43. He's got reinforcements coming. Bob has to tap out. A good position's not enough when it's already over from the beginning. Pushing forward here, eliminating the health flowers. He got both of them. Yeah, okay, so now Scout does have some limited harassment that it can do if this does pan out. And this is something that we see in Infernal versus Vanguard as well, where you take that Hexen and you just go seek out those healing flowers. And now the Scout, yeah, it can't just dive on in and try and find whatever damage it can, because it runs the risk of being picked off, and it escapes, but to what? So this is why the Boneyard is particularly strong for Celestial players. We have these island bases that are only accessible via air units or airdrop units, so like the Evac or the Harbinger. But if you're a Celestial player, you just float a Morph Core over, and look at that, we got a free base. Very, very convenient. Okay, Bob opening up with a command post first. Again, this is the build that he did in the previous game, at least the opening he did in the previous game. And I think it comes down to a lot of scouting information as well. So Aureil was able to capitalize on just an insane economy in game number 2. And it seems like Bob is trying to do his best to limit that from happening this time around. But it's also one of those scenarios where, again, if these Morph Core just fly across the map and just take up all of these Luminite mines, like what's he supposed to do? He can't stop that from happening. Oh, he does grab one of those. One of the slimes. Gets a little bit of money back. Take that. That'll allow him to put these mech bays down a little bit earlier. We're going to get hedgehogs once again. So this looks like it'll be the 4th collection array for Aureil. Okay, scouting out here, not finding anything. This one might be a tough scout, to be real honest with you. I mean, Bob is going to spend a lot of time here on the right-hand side. Not necessarily going to see this base. Well, I guess he could, because the scout, if it uses the on the hunt ability, would be able to see that, but he's got to come up and take a peek at it. So I guess there is a potential that this does get scouted a little bit easier than I thought. But instead, it is going to be Hedgehog focused once again. Bob believing in the Hedgehog power. Now, is this Scout? Okay, Scout is going to get over here. Now, with this being discovered, if the Scout is going to run all the way up, this now becomes a more exposed position that Bob can then try and attack into. Because it does have the ramp here on the top side. This ramp on the low side as well is a little bit more Bob favored compared to Aureil's position. So it is possible that this collection array could be a good fighting point, especially for Hedgehogs. Yeah, that are just going to be able to zip up here. They can bully this collection array off of the mine. It lifts up in the air. Cool, no big deal. These Hedgehogs are just going to siege up. They gain their anti-air attack, and suddenly this is no longer allowed to stick around. So it is going to force out one Sovereign's Watch. So it does mean it's going to be about 15 seconds that he has to wait, but there is no major response at this point. I mean, it's just Argent production. The Argents aren't nearly fast enough to get across the map. So how does Aureil respond to this long term? Okay, second Sovereign's Watch does get popped. Some good micro here to try and keep the DPS going and not waste the time watching for this position. Yeah, that actually is a really good use of his veterancy and the shields up top bar ability. So picking off that base, good start here for Bob. Aureil is already recouping that loss by building a base on the second island base, and he's already taken the lower right hand Luminite expand as well. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, we've basically arrived at the same place. So if you're Bob, what do you do? We do have a machine lab. Have we gotten transonic rockets? We have not yet. So what is the purpose of this machine lab? To get transonic rockets. Wonderful. That's going to increase the damage here. Oh, a great pickup on that collection array. This is exactly what Bob needs to try and do here. These Hedgehog are going to be able to attack to that high ground. And even if those collection array do try to pull up into the air, and they just siege and they just pick that base off. There's no escaping. So this is a great play by Bob to capitalize an otherwise insanely greedy Aureil play here in game number 3. Yeah, very, very well scouted. Wouldn't be surprised to see him run over here. And now suddenly this is a much different game. I mean, we've got a Morph Core going to what I'm going to call the traditional third base location. But once this base gets picked off, I cannot believe that Aureil didn't try to fly that away. I mean, obviously he wants the money and he just senses that it's just gone no matter what. But now we're looking at a Celestial player that is now going to be stuck on a 2-base economy. So as Bob is able to continue grabbing these camps and he starts increasing his economic value that much further, this now becomes a complicating position for Aureil, who was able to utilize the reinforcements of his army to engage with the Hedgehogs of Bob. Bob was not able to replenish his Hedgehog count in game number 2. That is a much different scenario now in game number 3 for Aureil, who's going to still need to engage this army and try and secure a position once again on the map, but having far less reinforcements to rely on if the fight doesn't quite go his way. And picking up this Luminite camp on the lower right hand side, also a great play by Bob. But Aureil's, yeah, I feel like Aureil's got to just push across the map. He can't afford to let this continue to expand because now Bob is in a much better supply position. He's got 93 supply to Aureil 77, much better location. Oh, but this is kind of an interesting spot to be caught in. The Kree are already up into the natural expand, and these Hedgehogs are now going to be able to start working on the squishy backside here. The Cabal have done their job to slow down the Hedgehogs for now, but what kind of damage can these Kree get done before the Hedgehogs are unleashed once again? They're going to try and fight into the health tower. Those Bobs trying to do everything to just buy time and get get some of these additional units out. One hedgehog trying to find some damage. They are getting a really decent repair by these Bobs in the health camp. On the high side as well, though, these hedgehog are going to find the Cabal. These are completely exposed units. They can't afford to be picked off like that. These units need to fight together, and Bob is in a much better position trying to hold this down. He is going to lose some units. This is not the end all be all, but Aureil is not finding the damage that he needs to. He needed a little bit more lethality into this push, and finding workers at the natural expand is not going to be enough this time around. Bob has got workers at the third base location. This is a good amount of damage, though. Bob kind of falling asleep at the wheel a little bit. These Kree able to find a nice amount of damage onto those hedgehog, but he does lose all the Cabal on the high side. He really needed to keep track of the Cabal count here. He's going to sacrifice yet another Cabal as well. That is not what Aureil needed. And suddenly this is a much different game in map number 3. So many of these hedgehog have survived and multiplied, the mech bay being powered up by these solar habitats, which, by the way, a change in this patch. Usually it's been 1 solar habitat per building. The solar habitats stack now. They might stack to infinity currently. So Bob could have additional solar habitats to push these units out even faster, but honestly, I think he's in the position he needs to be. He's going to take these hedgehog. He's just going to fly around the map here once again, taking a scout. Does he have a scout with him? No, doesn't have the scout, but I think he's going to be feeling in a very, very confident position. He just needs to continue getting the economic damage done just by picking off these collection arrays. But if you're Aureil, what's the follow-up response? You still have an arc station. It's still tier 2 tech. You've replenished your Cabal count a little. The Kree count is pretty strong as well. You're going to lose another collection array. And suddenly this is starting to feel much more difficult to deal with. Now we have a scout that's able to illuminate this position. That collection array gets picked off once again. My goodness, what a strong game. You know what? Here we go. I was wondering why the game number 3 was going to the Boneyard. I see why now. I see that these hedgehog have been an incredible resource for KR Bob, who is now in a commanding position in this game. He's got a sizable economy over his opponent, 128 to 80. The supply count is much more favored to the Vanguard player. He's got his third base on location. Aureil trying to replace these bases once again, but it is forcing him to stay back at home. He's having to be way less aggressive, and losing all of that map control is so damaging for Aureil. Ooh, nice little sensor drone here going to spot that collection array in the lower right hand corner. That is going to be instantly picked off. So I don't know what Aureil does at this point. It feels like Bob has just gotten so many of these hedgehogs to stick around, and now we're on 5 Vulcan. Where are we at? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mech bay. Yeah, I mean, Bob's got the he's got the resources. He has the economy to head this off. Oh yeah, look at this, 174 to 90. Every moment that goes by, Bob continues to multiply his army count, especially when you're multiplying it via Vulcan. And that Vulcan is going to provide not only a lot of supply, but a lot of sturdiness along with it. Now, he is supply blocked right now. He's at a 175 supply cap. You can go all the way up to 300 in Stormgate. So we'll have to see if he recognizes that he needs to build some additional habitats, or at bare minimum, he needs to upgrade some existing ones. But I think all of his habitats are in fact already solar. So no upgrades available there. This kind of feels like an end game fight right now, just dancing around those trees. Oh no, the Vulcans are going to remove them. The developers work so hard. They work so hard. How could you just destroy all their hard work? How dare you? Yeah, Bob's going to force the issue here. He's going to try and pick a fight that he would like. He's going to limit a little bit of the production. This isn't a crazy amount, but getting rid of that Guardian Nexus would be good as well. Aureil going to try and wrap around on the back side of this and see if he can get any kind of spread possible, but I just don't know if it can be done. I mean, these Vulcan can just clear positions to make the kind of scenery that they absolutely need. And yeah, just jumping forward here, clearing out some of those trees. But this might be a moment here. They can't jump forward into the army, and the Cabal are still a force to be reckoned with. They can slow down so much and lift these very precious units. Here, there are 3 Saber trying to deal as much damage as humanly possible, but look at that concave is just so big. More reinforcements coming in from the backside here. Aureil instantly has to back off. There's not enough DPS here for the Celestial player. Bob even forced into a bad choke here. There's still so much damage that can be done. These Vulcan are rather protected. The Cabal not able to get far enough forward. These Saber are trying to work down the Hedgehog count, but not going to be nearly enough damage. And suddenly Aureil is probably considering he has to tap out here. All of these units have been picked off. GG is finally called, and Bob says, no sir, this is gonna be a series. And he brings himself back from the brink, 1-2 against his opponent. This is a much different build order out of Bob. So we've seen Bob go for a couple of command post first games, and instead this time around opting for early Therium mining. I can only imagine that this is going to be for tier 2 tech and hedgehogs, but that feels interesting to me. Wait a second. Hello friend. Got a Bob on the opposite side of the map, friends. Okay, yeah, I was right. It's tier 2 tech. Is this just going to be a sentry post rush? Surely not. Surely not. What do we have? We have a Proxy. Mech Bay Proxy. I love it. I love it. This is great. So this is going to be one base, I mean, hedgehogs, but there is going to be tier 2 tech, so Vulcans can be on the menu as well. But I feel like Vulcans here are not going to be nearly as impactful. So hedgehogs seem like the logical play. Also, this Bob got veterancy. That, you know, that's kind of crazy. So Bobs can be built up via the veterancy in the top bar, and they get additional build speed. So right now at rank 3, it gets plus 60%. It is a Vulcan. Dude, that's crazy. This is a crazy cool build here. I'm loving this. And honestly, like, this Bob can stand over here. I mean, we could get I wouldn't be surprised to see a habitat go down, because a solar habitat on top of this is just going to make this even stronger. And this is in a pretty good position, a little bit out of the way, especially since Aureil is going to spend a lot of time here at the forward location, wanting to try and push forward towards his opponent. The only thing that concerns me is the fact that these buildings can float upwards and mech bays cannot shoot up. Nor can they load into a sentry post. Oh, but the sentry post is going to be a repair-o-matic. That's smart. That's smart. But again, there's not that much over here. So this is going to be really good harassment, but I wonder what it's all going to be good for. So we are going to get that early Vulcan. Do see shields up going down. That's going to negate the effects of that Sovereign's Watch. A little bit of veterancy here to beef up its health. And now we see that repair-o-matic, and it's a dead even split. A little bit favored for the Vulcan. Yeah, that's going to be forced up. He gets as much out of it as humanly possible. I wonder if this is just going to be repaired, or not repaired, but refunded, because you can refund these sentry posts. Although maybe there's no downside. There's no downside to keeping it there, because if you want to come back and harass here, you just bring the Bob up and you bring the Vulcan up, and it's all good to go. But I feel as if this can't be the only place that Bob goes to, because this isn't going to last forever. Because once again, the lion's share of the production, at least, is existing on the front side of the map. Oh, he's gonna pull this Vulcan back. This Vulcan's getting dangerously low. That Repair-O-Matic coming in so clutch here. Oh, that's enough DPS. That collection array is gonna go down. That did not lift in time. So not expecting to see the second Vulcan. Here comes some Hedgehog. That I think is a much better play. And that Repair-O-Matic bringing that Vulcan all the way up. It is up to a rank 2, the elite rank, if you will. And now these can just kind of rotate around. So if you're Aureil, what is the response? There is no additional base there. There is a Illuminate collection array on the south side. So we're at 1, 2, and number 3. This is aggressive. This is the you will not take this base again unless you come and take it from me kind of play. Okay, Vulcan's gonna need to turn around here. All of these units are standing in a nice little line. Oh, that was a scary moment here for Aureil. Oh, those Vulcan though are heavy units, and Argents do bonus damage to Vulcans. Oh no, the Repair-O-Matic is not quite finished here. This is going to be a very difficult moment, and I don't know if there is going to be enough here. One Cabal is gonna lift that up into the sky. This Vulcan push is done. And these units are going to be able to secure this location. And I am just worried that this was not enough damage. Sure, 2 Luminite mines were taken care of, and this Repair-O-Matic is going to be dealt with swiftly. But the units of Aureil are going to come and defend this. And again, I just don't think that's going to be near enough. Now, there are additional units coming out of the mech bay. I think that's maybe a little bit of a moot point here. Picking off the veterancy 3 worker is going to be good as well, but once again, I feel as if it defeats the purpose at this point. The proxy has been eliminated. 2 bases have gone down, but Aureil now comes out with the lion's share of not only the production, but the economy as well, because it's still just a 1 base Vanguard player at this point. So additional Hedgehog here trying to find some damage. They did try to pick off the collection array in the lower left-hand corner. That was unsuccessful. So we're at 1, 2. We're going to soon to be 3. 4 is on the way as well. Aureil with a stunning economy at this point. Has to be feeling pretty good. Now Bob is going to finally get a transition in mind. Has his command post coming in, but I kind of think that, yeah, I think Aureil just needs to go. Wait, he's got a collection array over here. I missed this one. All right, well, that's fun. That's been dealt with. I missed this one. I didn't even think to look over here. So no, I guess it's like, do I need to check all the other ones? We knew about that one. Doesn't have this one, thank goodness. So Bob not down and out of it just yet. I guess he's going to take advantage of the mech bay as long as Aureil allows him to have it. He hasn't quite found it yet. But I think Aureil has a strong enough army here. He's going to just be able to push. Is there a Vulcan on this side? No. No Vulcan are going to be a problem. Transonic rockets only just now getting started as well. Yeah, this was a very creative play by Bob. Good use of the resources, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be quite enough. The Cabal have just enough energy here to try and slow down these Hedgehog one final time. Transonic rockets not going to be allowed to finish in time, and the Kree are getting bullied into the corner, but GG does get called. Creative play, but Aureil survives, and he advances on to the round of 8.